More kinds of buttons, part 2. Let's just go right into it. No intro. So let's start with these guys. These are celluloid buttons, and they're not going to turn up super often, but you might find a big pile of them somewhere, and you'll definitely find them in older collections. These were used in the late 19th century, early 20th century. There's lots of different kinds, and some of those kinds are, I'd say the most common type is the tight top. Oh, that's a weird one. Let me find you a normal one. Okay, there's a sort of normal tight top. And the top is made of celluloid, which is a very thin sheet plastic material, and it can be molded into neat shapes like this one is. It sounds like that. And then the back is metal, and the celluloid is wrapped around. It can be this kind of sew through or a metal shank coming up or whatever, but this is a tight top celluloid. And though there are tests for determining kinds of early plastics, I think you can get a feel for celluloid pretty easily. I keep doing that because it's a very typical celluloid sound, and the feel of it is smooth, but you can tell that it's thin somehow. The substrate is very thin. All right, here is another kind of tight top. This one still makes that sound. This is an oval shape, and it has a self backing, so it has a sheet of the same celluloid on the back and a molded shank, self shank built in. So there's a nice big green oval. And then there's ones that are more 3D. This is still a tight top. It's got that wraparound, but it's more of a dome shape, and it has this great plaid print on it. And they get kind of crazy, this dome thing. Like this one is pretty domey, but not that much. But then they can go so far as this. Like this is a downright bell shape. And this one is still a tight top. It's still got the celluloid wrapped around and the metal shank. And it's got some painted and pressed decoration on it. And this one's a little harder to tell what it is, but again, it is celluloid. They can also get into these wacky sort of shapes like this. And even this. This one has a celluloid back as well. This kind of bullseye pattern is pretty popular. I really like these actually. I don't know why. I'm a sucker for things that are geometric, I guess. Oh, my favorite celluloid buttons ever though are the stripy ones. I can't really have trouble getting rid of these. They're so great. Let's see. Sometimes they are puffed up like that, and then instead of being a dome, they're flat on top. They also, celluloid could be made in this sort of translucent style where it is like you're seeing through to the metal there. This one, here's a target shaped one that's semi-transparent. I think the red is just applied on the yellow. The red is just like painted on the yellow. Another type. And sometimes they are combined with other materials, like this is celluloid with mother of pearl or shell or abalone. And this one is an example of celluloid that is trying to imitate ivory. It's sometimes called ivory, and it's that color, and it has a sort of striated pattern on it. It's really subtle on this one. Here's one where it's less subtle. Like you wouldn't even be able to make that in ivory. Well, I guess you would, but yeah, so there's more of this ivory stuff. yeah, so celluloid comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. They can be fun, colorful. They can come in all different colors. Here's one that's kind of dyed and carved. There's, I'll show you that one, sorry. They're, this one is like a funny green cone. They can be small. This one has a little pearl inlay. This one has some pressed design with some color on it. This one, it has a clear bubble, but it's very foggy. So celluloid, yeah, great early plastic material. You can kind of tell it most often by this tight top design with the material wrapping around and the feel of it and the sound of it. And also just the designs, like they didn't quite make things like this in other materials. So once you have some known celluloid buttons, you can start to get a feel for it. And then when you find more, you'll know what they are. This is not celluloid. This is in the wrong container. In fact, this is not even interesting. And this is going in my container of buttons that aren't really very interesting, which, as you see, I don't find all winners. And these are going to be probably put in really huge lots of hundreds, or I'll use them for crafts or sewing or whatever. A lot of them are just, they're broken, so I don't want to sell them as being special. And a lot of them are just kind of like modern-ish and not that interesting. It's a great color though. So yeah, this is a bead, not a button, but it was in my box of buttons. So yeah, these are kind of the rejects, just so you know. I don't find all cool buttons. I find some boring ones. All right, celluloid. We finished that. The next material I want to talk about is this one, which is vegetable ivory. This might be something you haven't heard of, but you'll be so glad you did because it's cool. So vegetable ivory is made of a nut called the tagua nut. I believe it grows in South America. This was very popular, again, late 19th, early 20th century. It's not used that much anymore for some reason. I'm not sure if it's endangered status. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. Not sure if it's endangered status. I think it's okay, last I knew. And I did buy a modern vegetable ivory bracelet like 10 or 15 years ago at just a normal store. Well, normal-ish. And so some people do make some things out of it. Anyway, so this grows on a tree, and it's a hard material. It's similar to a hard plastic, but it has a slightly different feel. And I hope this doesn't gross you out, but I can really say that if you tap it against your teeth, you're going to get the best feel for what it's like. It feels different than plastic or horn or wood or anything else. Now, the thing that is sort of a giveaway with vegetable ivory is that often the shanks are built like this. It's just a hole drilled through, and you put your thread through there, but you see the original color. That yellowish color is the natural vegetable ivory, and then this color is dyed. But when you see that natural vegetable ivory shank hole there, that's a really great way to know what it is. Now these tend to come in pretty organic colors for whatever reason. I think because they're trying to imitate horn mostly. Sometimes they're a little more exciting, like you'll get greens and sometimes some sort of burgundies and reds. Sometimes you'll find some cool red ones, but they tend to be a fairly muted palette. But they do come in cool designs, like there's different shapes and different textures, and they're very often carved, and they're quite cool when they're carved. So here's one of carved design. Here's another one. Sometimes they're quite deeply carved. Like this one really goes through. It's really cool. So yeah, like this one is just textured. It's probably pressed in there somehow. It's like a plaid. And often you'll see the natural color of the vegetable ivory in the carvings. I really like these swirly ones. They're neat. And these tend to be pretty small. I mean, you can find bigger ones, but it's not that common. Like this is sort of the biggest size I tend to find. I can't think if I've found a bigger one ever. Maybe. Here's another carved one. So they can get pretty fancy. They're really cool. And you can see, like, making a lot up of these, you could make something quite attractive. So yeah, vegetable ivory, great material. Comes in a lot of different types, and there are like these sort of 2-hole sew-throughs and ones with metal applied shanks. There's also whistle buttons, and if that was in a different video, whistle is when it's 1 hole on one side and 2 holes on the other, and when you sew it, the thread is directed to sort of converge in the 1 hole. And that's these are made in different materials. They're not really used very much anymore, but they used to be. This one's a cool carved one. That's not a chip, that's part of the design. Here's one with a neat pattern on it. So vegetable ivory, something to look out for. Oh, that one's cool. You can find these in most old button collections, as they used to be very common. And they kind of sound like that when they play together. Should we do one more in this video? Okay. One more. This is fabric covered buttons. Not super collectible. Some people collect them, but it's not one of the main sort of categories in the button world so much. But there are cool ones, and they are saleable, and people can use them also for modern crafting or whatever, not just collecting. And you can find some really old ones that are cool. So there's like these crocheted covered ones. That one's more wrapped than crocheted, but I think these are pretty interesting, and I think a lot of those would sell. There's also these older ones that are kind of woven. I don't know if you can see that. It's like a checkerboard design. There's like these mid-century ones that are really fun. This is the most 50s color. Like plaids, and it's like wool and corduroy and polyester or something. Some gingham, some striped something. And a lot of these could work. This is linen. I'd certainly use them for crafting. Sometimes they get really dirty, which is unfortunate. This is obviously meant to go on a Persian lamb coat. There's some wool. Let's see. Some more wool. Some more wool. Here's some velvet. Velvet ones are nice. That would be a nice lot. So there's that. Those are not as old, though. Still mid-century. But then there's some really old Victorian ones that are quite cool. And if you know anything about Queen Victoria's dress sense in the later years, it makes sense. So this one is like, it's got some like crochet possementerie type detailing, and then some brown cording, and then it's got black beads. This one is just the sort of possementerie cording design. Here's just lots of these that are beads and fancy crochet, and a lot of these is cool. You are vegetable ivory. Oh, but you have fabric in you. All right. This is some crazy Victorian cording. And there's more beading. There's some very exuberant Victorian beading. So you can make up lots of quite old Victorian black fancy buttons, fabric covered and beaded. That works. And you can also make lots intended for crafting, or just I don't know, if you have a whole set. Like if you had a whole set of these, and these are probably like, I think that's silk probably, and it's probably from the, I don't know, 50s, 60s. But say I had like 8 or 10 of those, I could sell that. That's fun. So those are fabric buttons. They're not, you know, talked about that much. There's some nice, this one's velvet with black glass. This one's crocheted with black, or is it crocheted? It's some kind of patterned, burned out velvet with black glass. Little crocheted ones. I don't know why I interrupted myself. I'm sorry. But yes, fabric buttons, not talked about that much, but they do have some collectible and sellable potential, especially if you're creative with them and don't just toss them in your lame buttons box like I used to. I like to use these actually. Oh, and one more thing about fabric buttons is they often have this kind of shank, which is cloth, and it's a little squishy. You just sew your needle right through that cloth, and that's really normal. I think it's I'm not sure why they do it that way. Maybe it's a more secure fastening for like a coat. Your thread doesn't break by the tension of rubbing against the shank all the time. I'm not sure, but it's very common. Sometimes they're normal metal shanks or whatever, but oftentimes you have these cloth shanks. So that is our third, I think, type of button for today, and we'll do more in the next video so you don't fall asleep. Okay, if this was useful, thank you. No, if this was useful, please hit the like button and consider subscribing, and thank you very much, and take care.